Good morning, Softball America. Actually, good afternoon as well. Just trying to make sure that we are live before we get started, and anybody that wants to join can join on. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat below, and we will answer them. So, good morning, Brady. How's it going?
It's good. We're feeling a little anxious today. It's Dolphin playoff day. Don't get many of these in my life. Still haven't seen a playoff win. I'm 26, so a lot going on in this household today.
Oh, well, let's get into some really fun stuff. And thank you to everybody that submitted your questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as possible. If you have questions, go ahead and you can talk to us. Actually, we figured out how to do it on X, so we'll be able to see your questions. Let's start with the top 25. Brady, we released the top 25. Lots of chatter, lots of excitement for the season. What is your overarching theme in terms of the top 25 teams heading into 2024?
I think we kind of talked about this when we were doing the top 25, but outside of the three-time defending national champions Oklahoma, I feel like you can go up and down the list and just feel like there are question marks with almost every team. And like that's even with like the top five. I mean, when we look at like Tennessee and Stanford, they both lost a very, very good pitcher, despite returning a lot of their roster. And so it's how do they kind of fill those roles? What does it look like? With every preseason poll, there's so many questions to it, but I think it's just like, would we all be shocked if this is different even after week one? Probably not. But that's the thing is like, we just want to see a lot of this, how it plays out. But I think that was the biggest thing was kind of looking at who's returning and what kind of roles there are. I know a big one, like in the comments, was talking about like why Georgia and Texas weren't even in the top five despite returning like almost nearly their entire rosters. And I think that's something we'll talk about later on. But I think that's the biggest theme for me.
All right, well, let's get into it. For those of you that don't have the top 25 in front of you, head on over to our Twitter page, and we'll get that to you. I'm going to read it so we're going to start from the back, though, Brady. We'll start at the 25th team in the country in preseason, San Diego State Aztecs, Stacey Newman, and San Diego State. Can't say enough about what they did a season ago. 39-17 Mountain West champs, went to the Super Regionals, got out of the Los Angeles Regional, didn't have to play UCLA, but ended up taking on Utah in Utah, losing that Super Regional. But Brady, what are your thoughts on the Aztecs? We'll start there.
I mean, even if going back to that Super Regional, they did play that Utah team really tough. Those games were very tight. I think the biggest thing is that they're returning Ali Light and Didi Hernandez in the circle. That was they're just kind of tough. And then the lineup that brings back their three top hitters, including Mac Barbara. And so you're always going to have that kind of lethal threat. And so I think that was really like cool to see. I mean, it'll be interesting how the offense works with Victoria Hayward going back to Washington as their hitting coach.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of seeing what the lineup does, I think, because I think the pitching staff will still be really good.
I agree with you. So that's our number 25 team. And then we're going to go into a question. We've got a question from our first question of the day will be from Jared, Brady's bestie. Can FSU compete for a national championship? Is this the year the ACC sends multiple teams to the Women's College World Series finally? Thank you, Jared, for that question. Again, can FSU compete for a national championship? I would say yes. I think that's a question that we all know. It's whether or not, I think the question mark for the number 3 team in the country, Florida State, is in the circle. They've got a ton of firepower. Losing Catherine Sandercock is going to be tough, but any team that has Lonnie Alameda as their pitching coach, and we've got Kaylee Rafter joining that squad again to help bolster both Troy and Travis over there. That coaching squad is just so good. So yes, I would say Florida State has the ability to compete. the question mark for me is in the circle. Brady, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, that's like the biggest thing. I mean, McKenna Reed showed a lot of good things last year, but as we kind of talked about throughout the year, she didn't get a lot of starts. And so I don't know how that really changes. Obviously, it's just kind of trusting the coaching staff and how that works. And it's always kind of a fickle question about can they compete with for a national title? Like we've seen them be in the title series and everything, but obviously the big daunting thing of OU is always there. But I mean, you gotta just trust. We've seen it. I know it's not always pretty throughout the regular season with Florida State, but it's not about style points and how you win. Like they just win and they always get it done. And so I think it's just kind of trusting that and trusting the process of it. And it might look different this year. They might be a more offensive team. And so it's just another thing that we kind of talked about earlier is like, is the pitching staff question mark? Yes, but maybe we just haven't seen what they look like yet.
All right. Thank you, Jared, for that question. We'll get to your other questions here in a minute. And again, if you have any questions right now, you can go ahead and write them in the comments, and we should be able to see them. Now we're going to head to Florida at number 24. The Gators were 38-22 just a season ago. They've got a new staff with Francesca Anea and Chelsea Dobbins as the pitching coach there. Obviously, Skylar Wallace returns, arguably one of the best players in the country. The key there is the pitching again for the Gators, and that's why they're at 24. Still got to see how these freshmen are going to do, and Miller, Brown, and Rothrock. It's a question mark there. I'm not quite sure how the Gators are going to do. We don't know. Again, Tim Moulton's teams always show up in the postseason. Brady, your thoughts on the Gators?
I know we got a few questions about like Florida and like freshmen, and so last year I feel like we always had a battle of, oh, Florida's always ranked too high, but this year, I mean, it comes down to the pitching, and it goes back and it goes folds into the freshman question of like, if you've been around softball, I think you've known that Ava Brown and Keegan Rockwell are like very well known. They have a ton of potential, but at the end of the day, they're both freshmen, and so they're going to determine how the ceiling of this Florida team because Skylar Wallace comes back. They add transfers Corby Otis, who had an All American year at Louisville, and then Jocelyn Eckerson from Oklahoma. And then they also have multiple freshmen in the lineup, including Mia Williams. For those who are basketball fans, that's Jason Williams' daughter. But she's uber talented. She's probably going to slot into the infield there. And so they're going to score a bunch of runs again. But it goes back to the looming question of last year's, how well can they pitch? It doesn't have to be the best staff in the country by any means, but you got to give that offense a chance. And if that happens day in and day out, then you're going to probably see Florida rise in these rankings pretty quickly.
I agree, and I'm excited to see how Francesca Anea does on that coaching staff. I think that's a huge pickup for the Gators, an alum, somebody that knows how to win and instill that Florida Gator culture there down in Gainesville. So that's the Florida Gators. Now we're going to go back to some of your questions. This is from Miss Jane Jetson on Twitter. And Brady, you're going to like this one. Did any school hit the transfer portal really hard, to the point where you could see them with the potential of having a really great season or a really tough one? Which is an interesting question. So a team that hit the transfer portal really hard and can have a great season, or one that's going to have a really tough one?
I will start with Arkansas. Obviously, Courtney Deifel has shown that she can hit the portal really well and gets the most out of her players. I think when you kind of factor in like the addition of DJ Gasso as their hitting coach as well, I mean, they bring in Brie Ellis from Auburn, who has a ton of power, and you're kind of adding that to a lineup that, is known for hitting home runs. But I think they're also trying to be diverse in their lineup nowadays because Ragin Johnson had a really good year, and then you pair her with Nia Carter, who comes from Iowa, who was very toward the top in the country in hits. And so I think you're going to have those two toward the top. You're going to have a bunch of hitters like Hannah Gamble, like in the middle of the order. And Rylan Hedgecock. And so I think that's a big thing. But I'm very interested in the pitching staff. Obviously, they lose Shanice Dells. But if we go back to when Shanice Dells transferred in, she wasn't the headline pitcher that was coming into that transfer class. And so they had Reese Berlin from Mississippi State, who had a really good freshman year, and I don't think enough people talked about it. And then Morgan Weinstock from Southern Miss. And so she's had really big wins against Power 5 programs. So it's just kind of seeing one of those two can be the ace of this staff.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brady, and was able to watch Reese Berloin throw in person at Mississippi State. So again, a good pickup for Courtney Deifel. Had them, Arkansas Razorbacks are number 8 in our preseason poll. They were 40-19 last year, and lost that heartbreaker to Oregon in that Fayetteville regional. Could see them. Hopefully, for its first time, we might be able to see the Razorbacks get to the Women's College World Series, and that's why we have them in that 8th spot. We'll see at the end of the year if we're still singing the same tune, but that's the Arkansas at number 8. Now we're going to head back to number 23 in the top 25, Louisiana, 50-16. Jerry Glasgow and his squad had quite a run a season ago, losing the Super Regional to Washington. Sam Landry is back, and they add Lexi Delbray, Sam Rowe, and Davis, who had 52 bags, stolen bases last year, so speed on the bases. Louisiana, Ragin Cajuns, topping out at 23 on our preseason top 25. Brady, thoughts on Louisiana heading into the 2024 season?
I think they were really young last year. You could probably argue that they overachieved in the year that they were relying on those kind of young players. And so now you can kind of carry that experience into this year. Obviously, the Sun Belt generally has good competition. They'll see Texas State and South Alabama, who have really good pitchers as well. But as you kind of talked about, like Maya Davis, like she's really good in center field. I think Lauren Aldridge was their best power hitter. And so I think there's plenty of pieces there. And I think they're always going to play a tough schedule. They're always going to be kind of battle tested. And so they could be someone that rises. And so it's just kind of seeing like where those young players take a step into development.
So that's the number 23 team on our Softball America preseason poll. Then we're going to head to Washington. Well, actually, let's go to a question. Let's see here. This is from Seth Oliveris. He asks, which team or teams outside your preseason top 15 do you see having the best chance of making the Women's College World Series? Seth, thank you for that question. Again, if you have any more questions, you can add them in the chat, and we'll try to get those in as well. But this is from Seth. Which teams out of your preseason top 15 do you see have the best chance of making it to the Women's College World Series? There's a few. I'm going to go with a long shot here. I'm going to say Nebraska. I know it's an easy one to say, but Nebraska's not really outside.
Wait, you're cheating. You're cheating. What?
They're 15. But I'm saying Nebraska. Seth, I'm going to stretch your question, but I think Nebraska, any team that has Jordy Ball, an X factor in the circle, it's all going to be about managing her and her innings, not only in the circle, but I think as a two-way player. But we've seen it done before, so that's my choice. Brady, sorry, I went outside the lines there. Your thoughts?
Okay, well, me, who plays by the rules, I'll go with 2. We kind of touched on it, but I think if those 2 young pitchers for Florida hit their potential like we think they are, I think you have plenty of experience in that coaching staff. You're trusting Tim Walton, and if one of them can be a superstar and one can be a really good, then I think there's a pathway for them easily to get there with that lineup. The other one, I kind of just think that it's going into year 2 of a program, and it's Trisha Ford and Texas A&M. I think it's seeing that offense under Jeff Harger for the second year. They add Jasmine Hill, who had a down year last year in her final year at ASU, but she has a pretty special connection with Jeff Harger, and we've seen her at an All-American level 2 years ago with that group. And so you have Julia Cottrell in the middle lineup. They're kind of adding some speed. You have like Amari Harper, Coco Woolley, Kennedy Powell transferred over from UCLA, and then if we can see Emily Kennedy kind of get to the spot where like she was throwing against Baylor, her no hitter, and I know Trisha Ford really challenged her this offseason to like work diverse her pitches, like didn't let her use her favorite pitch like during the fall and tried to push that. And so they have a very deep staff, and it's kind of just trusting that staff in year two. And so I think they had the talent to do so, and maybe kind of sneak into hosting Super Regional and then getting on to Oklahoma City.
So you're going with the Aggies. A year ago, 35-21 with Trisha Ford. I got to speak with her this summer during some recruiting, actually this fall, and she's excited about this squad, and I like that choice, Brady. I'm not surprised, but I like that choice.
You may know me.
Thank you, Seth, for the question again. Oh, hey, Gray, how's it going? We've got Gray Robertson. Good morning to you, Gray. Hope all is well. Maybe we can get Gray on here to give his thoughts here in the next couple of weeks. That sounds like a good idea. But again, if you have any comments, you can get up here just like Gray did, and we'll try and answer them there. So again, that is Texas A&M, our number 19 preseason on our preseason poll for Softball America. Let's move along here. We're getting to Washington. Washington at 22. They were 45-15 just a season ago. Advanced to the Women's College World Series. Lots of FSU and Stanford. And like you said earlier, Brady, they gained Victoria Hayward as the new hitting coach there under Heather Tarr with Courtney Gano and Sis Bates. It's quite a squad over there. But again, some question marks. And I think on the offensive end, losing Bailey Klinger, Sammy Reynolds, Kelly Lynch to the transfer portal to LSU, which we'll get into LSU in a little bit, Silent Rain Espinoza. But Brady covers the pack a significant amount, and I know you've got thoughts on the Huskies. Brady, thoughts on Washington?
Well, it kind of just goes off what you were saying is I think how I sum this up is think in your mind, like who is Washington's best hitter going into this year? And I think you really have to think about it. In my opinion, I think we saw last year that Riley Holtroff was really finding her own at the plate. And was once a top recruit. She's really good defensive shortstop. And so I think she's going to have to really take that next step and be a star for Washington. But there's a lot of young girls that are going to have to step into big roles that they haven't seen before after they graduate that really big class. And I think that's where you kind of see Washington being like lower than they usually are in a preseason poll. And obviously Ruby Malin's really good too, but it's the same type of thing. It's like getting those innings from the rest of the staff and what that looks like. And so I think those two you're going to get a lot from, but it's just there's so many question marks for me, and it's kind of just putting a lot of faith in that staff. I think Hayward has the potential to really get the most out of that group, especially ones that need a lot of coaching, and I think that's been the difference from the last couple of years for them.
So that is the Washington Huskies at number 22 in the Softball America preseason poll. Let's go to another question from Britain. It seems like UGA has higher expectations than ever as a program. Why is that? Who's the X factor there? And they're actually, and in quotes, they put, "I'm happy about it though." So must be a UGA fan. Thank you, Britain. Brady, I'll get your thoughts on Georgia, and then I'll add in mine. But I was able to watch them in the fall, and I was impressed both on the offensive end and the defensive end.
I think the biggest thing for them is like they just didn't really lose anyone from their team a year ago. And I know things kind of fell short in the super regionals, but this was a team that competed every single weekend in the SEC and was really good. And you could make the argument that they even got better offensively. I mean, you bring back a core that's been there for almost feels like 3-4 years, then you add the ACC freshman of the year in Sarah Gordon, who will probably be behind the plate for them. And like that was an area where, that was probably where they weren't getting the best potential of their offensive production. And I guess going into the X factor, I mean you can name 3 names, 2 names, but it's the pitching staff. It's how good Shelby Walters, Basson Kirkbex can be. And I think, and this is one of the kid I've been really excited to see is Lily Bax coming in from UNC. I just think that we never saw her potential at North Carolina. She was one of those girls who graduated early. She came to UNC as a 17-year-old freshman, and she's a lefty, which they didn't have last year in that kind of perspective. So how good those three can be will be like how good Georgia can be, because I think we're just trusting the offense. We've seen it plenty of times, like who can be good, and so that's the expectations for them and why it's so high is because we've seen the offense there. They have everything for them, and they're a team that doesn't have a ton of question marks compared to a lot of the other teams in the top 25.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Georgia, a season ago, 42-15. Again, Backus in the circle from the left side. We haven't seen Georgia have a lefty in a while, alongside Kerpex and Walters. Excuse me. But Bats, Mosley, Shambly, Fields, Kuma, Gordon, Goodnight, Lindy Ray Davis. I mean, when people ask why Georgia is where Georgia is right now, it's all of those things. So that's the Georgia Bulldogs at number 6 in the Softball America preseason poll. Thank you for that question, Britton. Appreciate it. Again, if anybody else has questions, we've got a ton from yesterday. But if you have any questions right now, we'll be able to see them if you comment on the live feed. So that is Georgia. Now we're going to head back to 21, number 21 in our poll, the Alabama Crimson Tide, which I'm sure our friends Gray and Emily think that they should be a little bit lower in the poll. But I think there's some question marks there, and I'm excited to see what Caleb Rowe does with that offense, joining the staff there. 45-22 just a season ago. Losses to Tennessee and Stanford at the Women's College World Series, a team that we were not banking on the fact that they'd make it to the Women's College World Series. The injury to Fouts, the loss of Fouts is huge, not only in the circle, but in her leadership qualities. But Jayla Torrance, Alex Salter, and the addition of Kayla Beaver for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little fire from Alabama. Brady, thoughts on Alabama at 21?
I mean, obviously, it's going to look different in the circle, not having Montana Fouts for the first time, and so, I mean, but we saw that you can get quality innings from Torrance and Salter, and like they did kind of carry the way into Oklahoma City, and you add Caleb Beaver, who was really good at Central Arkansas last year. And so she played top tier competition, including Alabama, and she pitched really well. And also, they got Aaliyah Johnson from LSU, who didn't get a ton of innings last year as a freshman, but has good stuff. And so I think we're going to see a committee approach. But yeah, it goes into, can we see a better offense? What does the offense look like? I mean, they graduated Prangy and Shipman, who were their most consistent hitters last year. And so it goes into that factor of unknowns. And so it's the pitching staff and the defense. If that's good, I think that's going to carry the way for the beginning part of the season. And then I think we'll probably see the offense progress, or hopefully progress, for Alabama fans. And so that's kind of like the key for Alabama is like who steps up in the lineup, who is the best hitter when we get to May and stuff like that.
So that is Alabama at number 21, the Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll take another one of your questions. Let's get this one from Jessica. Who are your teams on this list you are keeping an eye on to see who steps up after a player either graduated or transferred? Again, Brady, who are your teams on this list you are keeping an eye on to see who steps up after a key player either graduated or transfers? That is from Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, for the question. Let's get into it. There's a few I could go. Brady, I'll let you go first, so I don't probably take the one that you're going to say. Go on.
Well, I'm going to go to somewhere familiar with you. I'm going to say UCLA. The lineup's going to be good. They're going to score a lot of runs. But there's no Megan Framo. There's no Brooke Yanez. What is the pitching staff like? I think we both kind of have a pulse of what they're going to do. I mean, they're very high on the incoming freshman of Caitlin Terry. She'll go both ways, and I know they're very excited about her, but it's just, you never know going into the freshman year. I mean, Taylor Tinsley, they were very excited about heading into last year, but she didn't get a lot of innings. She didn't see a lot of big moments. And then you add Jada Cecil from UC San Diego. And, speaking about Brooke Yanez, she's kind of showed you how you kind of make that jump from the West Coast and then get into the Pac-12 and still be an All-American level. So, and it's going to be those three. They're going to carry the innings, and it's just I think the talent's there. I know that Coach I is kind of more in the bullpen now this year. She's really excited about that, and so it's just let's see it when it gets into play. I mean, they start off early facing Texas and Oklahoma State, and so we'll know very quickly like what this pitching staff looks like, and so I think that's the biggest thing was graduating those two from the circle.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The Bruins were 52-7 last year, 52 games won by the Bruins. Devastating loss to GCU and Liberty in the Los Angeles Regional. Again, like you said, Brady, losing for Ramo and Yanez is going to be the key here. The offense is going to go. The bats got cold in that regionals. But when you got an office led by Maya Brady and Megan Grant and Jordan Woolery, and then the freshman who's quite electric. I actually was able to see her this fall, and she throws very firm from the left side. She's gutsy. She's a competitor and could be the next, I might say it, kind of Nyjah Kennedy, the surprise freshman, if she can lead those Bruins. But again, Taylor Tinsley has some good stuff too. So I think that how we see the Bruins pitching staff managed by, like you said, Kelly I, who's back in the bullpen, is going to be something to keep an eye on. So, Jessica, thank you for that question. The Bruins are at 10 in our preseason poll. Now we're going to head to Auburn at 20. We've got people joining us. Hi, Adam. Hi, Paige. Adam, we'll get to your question in a second. Let's go to Auburn. Auburn is 43-9. Brady, thoughts on Auburn?
Well, that begins and ends with Maddie Penta, who had a stellar year last year. And it's just what happens around her. Because, when you have, I know we're kind of going away from this in softball, we're getting more to a committee, but when you have an elite pitcher, you're going to win a lot of games. It's just simple as that. And so it's, what does the health of Shelby Lowe look like? Like, how does the rest of the staff, like, and then it's just the offense. I know the offense, they transferred out a lot of girls. And so it's just, I don't really, that's another big thing. Um, so uh, it's just, and it's hoping that she replicates that year in Maddie Penta. And so, that's asking a lot, but, if she gets a lot of run support and like the rest of the staff supports her, then, they're another team that could surprise. But they're kind of just right in that mix with everyone else where it's just like, we know where the stars are, but who fills out around her?
So that's Auburn Tigers, Maddie Penta, Low combo, and Penta's sister is going to be joining 43-19 just a season ago. We'll see how that offense goes. That's Auburn at number 20. Let's take a question from Natalie Hansen. Natalie has a question. What mid-majors outside the top 25 do you think have a chance of rising into the rankings? Natalie, thanks so much for joining us today. We've got next five in our top 25, and I'm going to go with UCF. I think, they don't really count anymore.
No, they don't count anymore.
So I can't say that.
Tara's just continues to cheat, guys.
I'm like, they don't count. They don't count for this question. Brady, I'm going to go with you.
I mean, a big one. They were really tough in the regional. They were always playing a competitive schedule. I mean, Liberty still has a lot of talent, despite losing Carly Keeney and Caroline Wang, formerly Hudson. But I know that there's a lot of pieces. I think that, Paige Bachman showed a lot in the circle. Dot Richardson was really excited that, they have a lot of different arms that they're going to go to. And that's something that they didn't have last year because they only used really Bachman and Keeney. And so she thinks that there's a lot of potential in the offense as well. Another one that I think is going to be in a very, very competitive American, and this is because a lot of the teams come over from the Conference USA, is FAU. I think that they showed a lot last year. We saw Gabby Sacco be really, really good in the circle. didn't have a lot offensively, but they bring in a really big transfer class. Cameron Jackson from Duke, she's escaping my name, but she transferred from Lipscomb. I think it's Presley Liebeck.
Yep.
She was really, really good. And so I think they're going to be really good in the circle. They're going to be in a very competitive league, and so I would watch out for them. I think FAU has a really chance to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, I know that we had done Brady and I, when we were working over at D1 softball, there's a great top transfers list, and FAU is on there, and Jordan Clark leading the helm there for FAU. But, it's funny, when Natalie asked this question, I was just thinking, like, is it going to get to the point where we're no longer saying mid-majors? Obviously we're going to have our perennial powers in the sport, but it's almost to the point where softball, other than, the Sooners that are in that number one spot, are we going to be able to just kind of say what teams, Brady? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting conversation. I mean, when you look at like men's basketball, they call it the Power Six because of how good the Big East is, and I think that goes back to my last comment. Like the last year, the top five teams in Conference USA were separated by 2 games when the season ended, and then you have four of those teams joining the American this year in FAU, Charlotte, UAB. Another one that's escaping me because realignment is the craziest thing, and I'm not saying that as someone who works for the Pac-12, but it's just that, and then of course like losing the Pac-12, but I think it goes back. You have like a Louisiana leading the charge, like we've seen JMU, like we just have those teams, and so maybe it does change one day, especially when we go to this Power Five going next year, Power Four, or whatever we're gonna call it, and it'll probably change again the year after, and that's just life in college athletics right now.
Yeah, but thank you for the question, Natalie Hansen. Appreciate you. So we're going to go to number 18, Virginia Tech, 39-20 a season ago. Lost to Georgia in the regionals. I'm excited to see how Emma Lemley does with finally the new rule change. So there's no hopping off the mound. And Emma Lemley, I think she's going to let loose there for the Hokies, which, if the offense is a question, 100 home runs a season ago for Virginia Tech. Bree Peck is back as well. Brady, thoughts on Virginia Tech and Emma Lemley in the circle there?
I mean, that's like the biggest thing is like, it's not even just simply that, oh, like the rule is gonna like disrupt her. I mean, she no longer has to think about it. Which anyone that's played sports, like the mental side is so tough. Like I couldn't imagine, like, especially for her, she had it the hardest out of anyone. It was just constantly, and so I don't even know how you would get in the rhythm, but going to the offense, there is a lot of good pieces there. I mean, Emma Ritter was someone who was really good as well. Cameron Fagan, long line of Fagan sisters. But I think that we saw a lot of those home runs come against lower tier competition, and sometimes they would go quiet. And so it's kind of just balancing that out. Like if they can continue to step up, I mean, they're always a threat. I mean, we've seen that with other teams. I mean, if we go back to like the Arizonas, they're very home run happy, but sometimes they go cold against top tier pitching. So what does that look like, especially in the ACC, which might have its best season ever in terms of competition? And so, but I think we can really rely that Emma Lemley is going to be really, really good this year. I really think so. I think just the idea that she doesn't have to focus on that anymore, we're going to see her more like she was freshman year.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a storyline I'm going to keep an eye on. I think watching how Emma Lemley thrives in the circle, like you said, just that whole mental piece of not having to worry about looking to the umpire to see if you're going to get called for an illegal pitch. So that's Virginia Tech at number 18 in the Softball America preseason poll. Now we'll go to another question. Brady, can you see these in the chat? We've got quite a few questions here.
Yeah.
I will let's take a look at teammate Christian. How do you think Arizona, sorry, it gets really small when it comes up on screen for me. How do you think Arizona, Michigan, and Arizona State improve after missing the postseason last year? Great question. Thank you for that question, teammate Christian. Brady, I know two of these you cover heavily. How do you think they recover? I'll let you start, and then I'll add into my thoughts there.
Arizona, the biggest thing is pitching. It has not been there the last 2 years, and we've seen good outings from Devin Nets and stuff, but she has to work really hard, and so that's just how does that look? There's some freshman arms, like Ryan Maddox comes in. They're kind of really excited about her. The biggest thing there is, they made a change in their coaching staff. They bring in Christian Conrad, who, kind of overseen the development of Jenna Perez at LMU and like comes from that Florida State staff like tree. Um, the offense is going to be good, and it's just being more consistent. I mean, you have a lot of good pieces there. Alex Skaggs is really good. Can Carly Scoopin stay healthy? Because she's always a powerful bat, but she's battled injuries throughout. And so I think that side you don't really have to worry about. It's just, what does the pitching look like? Can they be good? That's the simple question. It's like, how good can they be? And if it needs to be just average, which it hasn't been lately.
And the addition of, like you said, Brady, Christian Conrad as pitching coach, and then Josh Bloomer as hitting coach there at Arizona. It's going to be a little bit of a mix and a different look. Again, another change to a coaching staff. But I agree with you. I think it's going to start and end in the circle. We always say defense wins championships. I was talking to my good friend Tori Tyson about it, and pitching is a part of defense. So unless you're solid in a circle, it's going to be an issue. But again, I think how they recover, it's going to be interesting, and we'll keep an eye on that, especially in the last year of the pack for both Arizona and Arizona State. The Sun Devils, Megan Bartlett in her second season there for ASU, losing a few to the transfer portal. Michigan rebuilding under Bonnie Thole. So I think, getting rebuilding is a part of all three of those. So great question, Christian. I think those are three teams that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Brady?
And with the flip side of ASU, which is crazy to say after like a few years, was, last year when Bartlett took over the job, it was rebuilding the pitching staff, and we kind of saw pieces, and I think there is a good group there. And then this year is all about rebuilding the lineup. I mean, there was times last year that there was just kind of no one producing. Jordan Van Hook got on to a really good start. It was really cool to see, but I mean, she even said like she's never been that tired in her life because it was the first time being a full starter as a senior, and so that kind of took a toll on her. But they have a really exciting group. They had Kelsey Hall from Boise State, who was the Mountain West Player of the Year. Tanya Wendell, and these players have multiple years of eligibility, so they're part of this rebuild. They're gonna be there. It's not just like a 1 year thing. And so, but Wendell was the WAC freshman of the year, and then there's also another one that she hardly played at Houston last year, but Bartlett's really excited about Aiden Allen and what she can provide. She thinks that Allen was kind of one of those kids that got lost in the COVID recruiting cycle, kind of like a late bloomer. And so don't be shocked if she's kind of a name that pops up for ASU this year.
All right. Thank you for that question. So we're going to get back into the top 25. We're going to number 17, South Carolina. Season ago, obviously, Donnie Goborn just lights out for the Gamecocks. 40-22, lost to Florida State 1-0 in that regional. Fun to watch after beating Florida State and then coming back and having that loss. But losing Donnie Goborn, adding Alana Vaughter, who many were wondering where Vaughter was going to go once she entered the transfer portal. Still shocked she left Stanford, but going to be a huge impact for South Carolina and Bev Smith's team. Brady, thoughts on South Carolina, our number 17th team in the Softball America preseason poll?
Speaking of Stanford, don't be shocked if South Carolina wins a lot of games like Stanford. They play really good defense, and then you add Vaughter, and then oh my gosh, the freshman's name. That is escaping, but they're adding another talented freshman in the circle. It's Sage. I'll come back to it. But anyways,
got a lot of names happening.
Yeah, and please forgive me, newborn, been awake at different hours of the day.
Yes.
But they also bring in a lot of transfer hitters like Denver Bryant, Bree Warren, girls that have really played like in the SEC. And so, it's another thing. Like, I think they're going to win a lot of low scoring games. They're going to pitch well. They played defense really well last year. And so it's just what can Vaughter help instill there to get South Carolina back in track? Because this was a team that I think it was 2018 that they were the number 9 national seed, and like they were very quality, and I think it's kind of like taking a downturn lately, and so I think this might be the year that we really see South Carolina get back on there and kind of carry momentum from last year.
So that's South Carolina at number 17. Then let's go to Stanford, Brady. Why not? Let's go to number 4, Stanford. I think some people were asking why Stanford is where they are, but anybody that watched the Cardinal just a season ago would argue different. 47-15, Jessica Allister, incredible job managing that squad. Lost to OU in 9 innings in the Women's College World Series. Gosh, remember that, Brady? After beating OU at the Women's College World Series. Nyjah Kennedy, so electric in the circle. Another game changer, and the addition of Taryn Kern, big bat for Stanford. Thoughts, Brady, on the Cardinal, our number 4 team in the Softball America preseason poll?
This kind of goes back to what I was saying about like Maddie Penta was, when you arguably have the best pitcher in the country, you're going to win a lot of games. And, they do lose 2 kind of stalwarts that they've always had, in Emily Young and Taylor Kindlesberger, but they're going to play good defense. They're passionate about it and stuff. And I know, like, obviously losing Alana Vaughters, it's huge, but Reagan Krause, she's been that spot for number 2. She's going to mix well with her drop ball and Nyjah's rise ball, and so it's going to be really good. And then we've seen spurts of the offense, and I don't think Taryn Kern is going to just hit all these home runs like she did last year. Stanford's stadium just doesn't play like that. They've always said that. But having that powerful bat changes everything. And like, you're probably going to have River Mailer like leading out the top. And then, unfortunately they lost Kaylin Koch last year, like midway through the season, to a knee injury. We were seeing good things from her. We've seen good things from Kylie Chung in the World Series. Like, there are pieces there for the offense to support Nyjah Kennedy, and Kennedy herself. The idea was that she was going to go both ways and has a really good stick. And we never saw that last year, but I don't think that means that we're not going to see it this year. I mean, if you go back to someone else who was a star in the pack, Mariah Mazon at Oregon State didn't really hit it all her first couple of years, and then she turned into Oregon State's best bat. And so I wouldn't be shocked if we kind of see that progress through. But there's going to be names that popped up, and I know it's not gonna be a fireworks show like OU, but I think there's pieces there for there to be some small ball and just really good rallies in the Stanford offense. And I think it's having arguably the best pitcher in the country and an offense and defense that just get it done for you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brady. And those of you that are on here, you're OU fans, we'll get to you in a second. If you have any thoughts about OU, we can you can put them there in the chat, and we'll try and add in here thoughts and questions regarding the Sooners. But we're going to stay in the pack. We're going to head on over to Oregon at number 16. The Oregon Ducks, 38-17, just a season ago, falling in the Stillwater Super Regional, the Epic Regional at Fayetteville. Hanson Breedlove back at Emma Koff and Caleb Pollard. Brady, I know, again, you covered the pack at length. Thoughts on the Oregon Ducks at number 16, Melissa Lombardi and her staff, which she added Cindy Romero this year to the staff. Thoughts, Brady?
Yeah, the Oregon's kind of an interesting one where it's unlike a lot of the other teams, was that they may be lacking true star power, especially after the graduations of Allie Bunker and Tara McGowan. But they just have a really solid group. I mean, we saw the offense kind of take off in Faithful last year. I mean, and they have a lot of pieces coming back. I mean, Ariel Carlson, KK Humphreys, and adding Emma Koff, who was really good at Georgia Tech. She's kind of be able to stabilize either behind the plate or an outfield position. And the pitching staff is solid. And just, if someone can just kind of become that star, I think that's where we kind of see Oregon rise. But I think that they don't have a ton of holes. And like, that's something that not a lot of teams can say. It's just like, will a roster of just a lot of really good players get it done? Because softball can sometimes be a game of star power, as we've seen, and it can be the ones that change the games. And so Oregon, I think, is a team that can go one way or the other, and it's just seeing how consistent they can be.
So that is the Oregon Ducks at number 16. We're going to roll along here. We've been on here for a bit, which is great. So if you have any more questions, put them in the chat. That's Oregon at number 16. Then we're going to go to Clemson at number 5. Could be a big year for Clemson. We're 49-12 just a season ago. Valerie Cagle, Millie Thompson back in the circle. Oda Logaleo, Hyatt, a number of names back for the Clemson Tigers. John Rittman's done a heck of a job building that program, and we could see them in the Women's College World Series this year. Brady, quick thoughts on the Clemson Tigers?
I mean, the biggest thing for them might very well just be what the RPI looks like at the end of the year. I mean, they were a very good team. They played OU well, but it's when you get matched up with OU in a regional and have to play in Norman, like it's gonna be tough. And so I know that was the biggest thing, was that Clemson's non-schedule or non-conference schedule just wasn't that great, but like they're gonna challenge themselves more this year. I think Rittman realized that. You're gonna win so many games just simply because Valerie Cagle is Valerie freaking Cagle. Like, she's just that good. And then they also add another talented ACC bat, Alex Brown from North Carolina. And so I think it's just kind of filling out that, Millie Thompson is a veteran in the circle. They've shown other arms there. And so I think I think that they're going to win a lot of games, but they just got to play that top competition and try to get that top 8 seed.
Yeah, I agree. We talked a little bit about this last season, but having a tougher schedule for Clemson, even before they get into ACC, getting challenged a little bit more, but proved in that series against OU that they belong to be in the top 8 teams in the country. So that's Clemson. And we're going to number 14, Oklahoma State. Kenny Gajewski, just a season ago, 47-16. Had a pretty big slide at the end of the season there, but rallied and advanced to the Women's College World Series with losses to FSU and Tennessee and the Women's College World Series. But Kilfoyle is back in the circle. Rosenberry, Katie Coots, who they'll gain in the circle as a freshman, Kyra Aycock, and then an offense which lost a lot, but have some key pieces that I think that's why Oklahoma State's at 14, just to see how that offense turns around with some youth there. Brady, thoughts on Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I think they're going to be fine in the circle. I mean, Lex Kilfoyle really showed like her best year last year, in my opinion. Carrie Aycock had really good moments as a freshman, and then they kind of fill out their staff. But when we were talking about our top 25, my biggest question to you was, who is their best bat outside of Caroline Wing, formerly Hudson from Liberty? And I think we both had to really think about that question. And so there's plenty of girls that showed potential. I mean, Taylor Edwards was really good last year as a freshman, and Michaela Work, and then a few freshmen that are going to be in there. But it's just, what does that look like? And I think you were a little more optimistic than I, just based on some coaching staff changes and such. But it's kind of like the Washington question. It's like, who steps up in that lineup? Who becomes a star? Like, what does it look like day in and day out? And if it looks a lot more like early in the season, then I don't have any issue, and they'll probably be a top 10 team. But I don't know if they're going to have those struggles, especially relying on so many young kids stepping into bigger roles.
Yeah, so forgot this at the top. Vanessa Shippey steps in as hitting coach for Whitney Clower at Oklahoma State. So we'll see how that offense gets going heading into the 2024 season. Moving right along here, we're going to head to number 7, Texas. Texas, number 7 in our preseason poll, 45-15-1 just a season ago. Super regional loss to Tennessee. Gosh, they just have, when you talk about a pitching staff, you got Simpson, Jack, Gutierrez, and Mac Morgan. And then you add Teagan, who's the young freshman who had loads of strikeouts in the fall. What a complete arsenal of arms Texas has, and a young defense with some experience. throughout that lineup. I'm excited to watch Texas this season, and that's why they're at number 7. Brady, thoughts on the Longhorns?
I don't think either one of us would really be surprised if we had like another Women's College World Series final where it's OU and Texas. I think that the potential to be that second team is right there for Texas. I think last year it was just the lineup relied on so many freshmen. I think a lot of them kind of hit a little bit of a wall. There was a lot of defensive miscues, and so it's really just it's those big steps like Vivi Martinez, like Leanne Good, like Reese Atwood. Like how good can they be this year? And then they kind of be the core, and even like returning Mia Scott, Bella Dayton. Like it's going to be good. It's just how good can it be? Because I think that pitching staff is going to be stable, and it's the biggest thing is playing solid defense. And I think sometimes, those big innings kind of spurt for Texas where it kind of rolls. And so, especially with Good and Martinez playing up the middle, like they have to kind of be better in that aspect for Texas to reach its potential.
Yeah, and can we just give props to Reese Atwood? I mean, was 3 walk-offs in a row just last year as a freshman? That is epic. Anybody in their career, wherever, to have those 3 walk-offs in a row, yeah, pretty fantastic. But again, excited for Texas and the Longhorns. They're at number 7. Then we're going to head to Utah. The Utes advancing to the Women's College World Series last year, 42-16, winning the Pac-12 tournament. Losses to Washington and Oklahoma State. And to be honest, Brady, you and I both know once the Utes got to the Women's College World Series, they just look exhausted, had some injuries. It was a dogfight to get there. But return Lopez and Ladd and add Racy Miranda from Cal State Fullerton. Brady, thoughts on the Utes? Again, I know you covered them extensively in the pack, but thoughts on Amy Hogue and her squad?
I mean, we really saw Mariah Lopez just turn into an ace last year. It's not always as pretty in strikeouts as a few others, but really good lefty with good stuff. And she just had a mindset change. And then that offense brings back mostly everyone except for Alyssa Bonstrom and hitting coach JJ Gasso, who they then replaced with Courtney Martinez from Iowa State. And it sounds like that's been a really solid transition. Obviously that's kind of like a big loss, but I think they probably hired the best person they could to fill such a big role. And so, you have a really veteran lineup and Julia Jimenez, Leah Lardy, Sophie Jaquez, they're still going to be a really good offense. And it's just, let's see if Mariah Lopez isn't worn down by the end of the year. It's going to be a really big thing. Just how many quality innings Racy Miranda and Sarah Ladd can give them. And I think that's going to be their biggest thing working with Paige Parker.
So that's Utah last season for the Pac. Let's see if the Utes can repeat there as Pac-12 tournament champs. That's Utah at number 13.
Do you got to say that every single time? That's just a stab in the heart.
Well, it is. It's facts. I mean, I'm just as sad as everybody else, but it's the fact. So heading to Duke at number 9. Oh, Brady. Gotta love it. Number 9, Duke, the Blue Devils, 48-12 just a season ago. Lost to Stanford in that super regional. I think that's when we saw how dominant Stanford's pitching staff could be, and just in a tough, just going to be very tough in a 3-game series. But Marissa Young returning most of the players there for Duke. Brady, quick thoughts on Duke?
Last year they were a really young squad and still found ways to be very successful, and I think that's why we're very high on them. I think I wouldn't be shocked this year if Cassie Curd becomes a star. And she has a really electric stuff and beat some good teams. I mean, sometimes her command got away from her a little bit. I think we saw that in the Super Regional. But just kind of refining things in the sophomore year. I mean, Jayla Ryder is competitive. They had a graduate transfer from Pitt and Jenny Drogmoller. And so she had really good innings at Pitt, but never really had a ton of run support. So I think that's a really good group. And then it's just, trying to avoid those kind of sophomore slumps when you kind of look at Deanna Jennings and Amia Vega, all the potential's there. And it's also just considering that, I think they really want to play hard for their coach, especially the way things kind of went for the offseason for Marissa Young and her family. And so I wouldn't be shocked if like they really want to do everything for her, and it's just a little more motivation going into this year.
So that is Duke at number 9 in the preseason poll. We're moving along here because we don't have as much time left. We're going to head to number 12, LSU. The Tigers, they are back with a 42-17 record just a season ago. Lost to Louisiana in that 8-9 barn burner in regionals, but gained Kelly Lynch in the transfer portal. Burzon is back. Got Pleasance, got Briggs, and the addition of Bryce Harper to help out that offense. I've got my eye on the Tigers. Brady, thoughts on LSU?
It's just, it's finding consistency. It's just that was their biggest thing. We saw it in the Super Regional against Louisiana. It was just everything kind of got chaotic, but they do fill in the addition of the hitting coach with Bryce Neal, who has kind of overseen things at Louisville. They've had All Americans with Carmen Greenwood,
I call him
Taylor
Harper. I
Roby.
call him Harper.
Yeah, you call him Bryce Harper.
Neil.
But yeah.
Nice.
And so I wouldn't be shocked. And like the injury kind of plagued her last year. She got off a really good start, but I wouldn't be shocked if Taylor Pleasance is SEC Player of the Year under Bryce Needham, just has a terrific year to kind of finish things out. But they were always trying to kind of figure out their catcher position after losing Hannah Carson very early on, and so she's kind of back after injury. And I think they're always going to be competitive in the circle. That's kind of the big thing. And I wonder if a change of scenery for Kelly Lynch gives her a chance to kind of finally hit that ceiling that we always wondered if she could. I know things just sometimes were really good and sometimes they're really poor at Washington. So maybe that's just something she needed. But I think there's a good chance, if you are a betting person, that LSU kind of ends up in Oklahoma City if things go right.
So that is the LSU Tigers. Bryce, apologies to you. I owe you something. That's the LSU Tigers. And we're going to take one question before we finish off here from Brandon. How real is a sophomore slump after having such a stellar freshman year? Anyone have you worried? I don't know if there's anyone specific that I'm worried about, but here's the thing with a sophomore slump. After your freshman year, it's kind of a surprise. People don't really know much about you, but because of the advancement of technology and data, I think having video on various arms or hitters is going to be difficult for some people. Maybe a Taryn Kern after having that stellar freshman season over at Stanford. I'm not quite sure how, that bounce back, change of scenery that Brady just talked about. But I think it all has to do with a lot of, they know you now. And I think that element of surprise is no longer there. Brady, anybody you can think of?
I mean, this is something I think you, as a former player, can touch on more, and just kind of like the mental side. Like sometimes it may just be in your like head, but I mean, it's there, it exists, but I think coaches themselves kind of like put it off, and it's just like something they trust their players to get through. And I mean, you can have that any year. I mean, some people struggle more to have a down year their junior year or their senior year. Like things just happen. I know the saying exists there, but I just think the best of the best are going to overachieve past it.
All right. Thank you for that question, Brandon. Moving along here, heading to one that we got a lot of questions on X or Twitter, X formerly known as Twitter, is Baylor at number 11. The Baylor Bears 40-18 just a season ago, returning most of that lineup, and a healthy Binford is back in the circle, and Orm for the Baylor Bears. We've got them at 11 because they're returning most of that squad. And we saw early in the season how effective Binford was against OU. And Orm, another arm for the Baylor Bears. Brady, thoughts on Baylor?
That was like a thing, if you remember, like Baylor just kind of, their pitching staff just got a little bit tired. That was kind of a huge thing was, it was just kind of a line of things like Binford gets hurt. and you kind of lose a quality bat and an arm that puts more innings on Armois, and then she wasn't healthy enough to even really pitch in that regional against Utah, and so we never really saw the full strength. Um, but and I hope this is in regards, this isn't all in just because, they had the one win against OU last year. Like this is just a very quality team with a good coaching staff. Um, you know, Govin and Mackenzie Wilson are kind of like fill out that. And so when you bring back a core like that, you know how you can win. Things are set up to be in spot. They have a deep staff that got those innings when those two were kind of down. So if they're healthy in the circle, I don't see why not that they're a team that can host a regional toward the end of the year.
So we'll keep an eye on Baylor. That's Baylor at number 11. Jumping back to number 2, Tennessee, the Lady Vols, Karen Weekly leading that squad back to the Women's College World Series, 51-10. White, Gottschall, Pickens, and Orsini in the circle for the Vols, returning most of that offense, including Kiki Malloy, and they're in that number 2 spot, just behind Oklahoma. Brady, thoughts on Karen Weekly's Tennessee Lady Vols?
I know a lot of people got questions about why Tennessee was so hard or so high, and they really was like, oh, well, what about their pitching staff? And I'm like, I understand Ashley Rogers was really good last year, but she wasn't someone that carried a ton of innings. 140 innings isn't like a big astronomical amount. It's as simple as that offense is really good. I think it's going to be better. Kiki Malloy is at least a top 5 player in the whole country. And then the corners, Zeta Pooney and McKenna Gibson, they have a ton of power, but you arguably upgraded offensively with Sophie Nugent behind the plate. Like, I think that's going to be another impact. And then up the middle, I know that Mackenzie Donahue was stepping away from the game, but it sounded like she wasn't going to be the starting shortstop this year. It was going to be freshman Bella Faw. And then you add Laura Mueller from Middle Tennessee State, who has a really good bat. And so I think arguably you're going to have better offense production from your catcher, your shortstop, and your second baseman. And so that adds into a really good lineup already. And then it's as simple as, and I'm hoping I'm stating this right, but like Carlin Pickens might be the player that has the most influential impact on the entire nation in the aspect of it. Because if Carlin Pickens is what she was out of the gate last year before with her confidence in her stuff, and if she's an ace, like we've seen that she has that stuff to be, she's confident in herself, then there's no doubt in my mind that Tennessee is going to be the number 2 team in the nation. But if we do kind of see those struggles toward the end of the year, I understand the question about the pitching staff. But Peyton Gosh, was really reliable. It's just if Pickens can be first half Pickens from last year, then I think it's going to be really, really good in Knoxville.
Yeah, from what I heard, Pickens has some pretty electric stuff from those around the SEC. And I agree with you, Brady. I think if Pickens steps into her own, she's going to help lead that staff. And then you got Gottschall as well. So that's Tennessee. That leaves us with the Oklahoma Sooners at number 1. The Sooners were 61-1. And Brandon, I got your note. I know that Stanford did not beat OU in the Women's College World Series. Unfortunately, I had it written here backwards. So 61-1, the Sooners. Thank you for keeping me on my toes. I got a lot of notes here. But the Oklahoma
It's been a long week, guys. It's been a long week.
The fact that we're on here, we've got a background, and that we're able to speak to you is incredible. So thank you all for joining, because this has been super fun, and hopefully we can do this every week during the top 25. But Oklahoma lose Jordy Ball, pick up Callie Maxwell, have an incredible senior class. They're going for a 4-peat, or going for 4 in a row. That would be a class that literally could say, I went to college and I won the national championship every single year. Huge. Chasing history. And again, Patty Gasso leading the Sooners once again to their 3rd national championship in a row. Just electric. That offense led by Jada Coleman, Tiare Jennings, Kinsey Hansen, Riley Boone. Lose Grace Lyons. So I think the only question mark might be at shortstop. And Alyssa Brito at 3rd. She could move over to short. But Brady, thoughts on the Sooners and likelihood of Oklahoma getting 4 in a row?
Sorry to be a nerd here, but I think Oklahoma is essentially the Death Star without any faults. Like there's no savior of the galaxy of Luke Skywalker with the Force. Like it's like it really is like the evil empire. Like there's I mean it's so crazy that a team could lose someone as phenomenal as Jordy Ball and it's like they probably won't skip a beat. I mean, you can. I. I mean, I know Kelly Maxwell. Like things just looked off at times last year, but you get her to OU and Jen Rocha, and you're just like, oh, wonderful. Just see her be great again. And then they have so many options. I mean, Carly Keeney, like can be a workhorse. Kristen Deal, we saw her in kind of the postseason. Patty trusted her to be in that spot. And then Peyton Monticelli had really good stuff. And I don't think she was kind of ever in that spotlight. And then you just have the lineup, which, it's, you're going to have like a freshman, Ella Parker, who's going to compete with a former Pac-12 freshman of the year and Sydney Sanders for playing time. And it's like, that's just how competitive that roster is up and down. And so, it's unless I think health and injuries, like if they just had bad luck, I think that's really the biggest thing that could potentially stop a four-peat. But until we see a team beat OU twice in the spot, it's just hard to ever like go against it. And you know, maybe it changes next year when all these girls graduate, but it's just I think it can be good for the sport because it challenges everyone else that you really got to be on top of these things. And so yeah, I'm just really proud of my analogy right there in the beginning. I just thought about that.
The Death Star. We'll be using that throughout the season. Well, that's it for our top 25 preseason top 25. Leave your comments. Let us know if you liked it, and hopefully, go on, Brady.
I would like to close and like answer Adam's question about. Would love to hear the National Play of the Year prediction. I know people were like asking about touching on Nebraska, but I think some people will say, "Oh, like why they're just that high because Jordy Ball," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, they were a really, really good team before her, and they have. I mean, Billy Andrews is really good. I don't think people really talk about her in the nation's top shortstops enough. Like they have a competitive lineup." And it goes back to that star power thing. I mean, and this is no slight to Courtney Wallace, who graduated and played in that two-way position, but that role is going to go to someone who I think can be the best player in the nation, and we've seen that. And no, we haven't seen Jordy bat a ton, but she can do it. She's crazy. She flies around the bases. She can play defense well, and so if Nebraska is anywhere near like hosting a regional, which I think they can, I'm going to bet on Jordy Ball being the National Player of the Year and being a great two-way player. And I know that she holds this star power, but that's sports. Sometimes like things don't go your way, and someone has to go save you. And Jordy Ball can do that. We've seen that. She's a bulldog in the circle, and I'm excited to see her at the plate as well.
I agree with you, Brady. Jordy Ball would be my pick. But I think we've got a lot of players in that conversation. You could look at a Kiki Malloy, Amaya Brady, a Jada Coleman. Obviously, Valerie Cagle could lead the Clemson Tigers to the Women's College World Series. There's so many names. And the great thing about this is we're putting together a top 100 players list for you all, and that will be up on the site. Update on the site. We're working away. We've got a developer working away on the site just to make sure we can get everything for you. It's all squared away by next week. We will keep you updated, but that will be one of the incredible resources that will be up on softballamerica.com next week. And you'll be able to take a look at our membership options. There's going to be a few options for you all. Hopefully one of those will tailor to you and your softball needs. Just really want to make this a place and a space that everybody feels comfortable, and it's an overall coverage one-stop shop for softball, not only Division I, but we'll drill down and get into some details as to what else we're covering. Brady, Final thoughts on the preseason top 25 on Softball America on January 13th of 2024.
I'm just kind of excited. I know some people they're like, oh well, you're just gonna win again. I mean, you never know. Things can change, but it's the fun around the way. Like we love this sport, we love seeing it, and I think, and we can't see it with the graphic behind us, but like behind the graphic in our Twitter header, it does say we're no one's sister site. The reason why we both kind of chose to make this move is that, the group here, everyone's sole focus is softball. And that's what we want for everyone to be there, is that we want a group that supports the game. We want to continue to grow it, and we want to do it in different aspects of this. And hopefully you guys will be along the way. I really love this sport, and I think this is the best opportunity for myself. And so I know Tara can kind of speak to her own opinions, but I'm really kind of excited about this, and I hope that we can continue to give you guys great coverage throughout the season.
Yes, and we hope that you can come on here and feel comfortable asking us questions, and we can have healthy civil debate and make sure that we are discussing, like Brady said, the game that we all know and love. And that's why we're all here. And the game doesn't know. That's why we play the game. Who knows who's going to be standing in that national championship in Oklahoma City, raising that trophy just in June, just in a few months, actually. But we're excited to go along the journey with you all. And as always, feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll keep you updated on the site and building of the site. But again, thank you all so much. And thanks for joining us. And we can't wait to be a part of this softball family with you all. And Tara Henry hosting for Brady Vernon on Good Morning and Good Afternoon Softball America. We'll see you all hopefully next week when we get Jen McIntyre on here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the vision that we have. But Brady, thanks so much for joining me this week. And if anybody had any questions, you can holler at us on Twitter. Thanks so much, everybody.